Today on Locked On Rockies, the Rockies, if they want to avoid another season of lots of losses, they have to come out swinging against some great opponents because their schedule, it starts out tough.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 21st day of November in the year 2023. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, well, guess what? You're in the right spot because that's what we do around here. We talk Rockies baseball. We enjoy Rockies baseball around here. And we talk about it on your favorite streaming service and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show by firing off your Rockies hot takes and your thoughts about the show and about the Rockies themselves in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section. Your subscription there is the easiest way to help the show grow. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and being an everydayer, someone that tunes in every day. Shout outs to all of y'all out there, because I know we got a really great dedicated group of fans out there who hang out here for the pod. Sorry about yesterday. Unexpected things popped up in my life, so I had to handle those. But we're all good. We're all set, and we're all ready to go to talk Rockies baseball today. And I wanted to take a look at the Rockies schedule because I was curious to see how this team was going to be able to, who this team opens up against, and who this, how the beginning of the season could start off for the Rockies. And plain and simple, it's going to be the Rockies are in for a really tough slog. I mean, this schedule, even just scrolling through May, I mean, there's a little bit of a reprieve here in June. I'm just looking for the stretches where the Rockies are actually matching up against weaker talent. And it looks like the second half of the season gets a little bit better when you're considering some of the stretches the Rockies go against here. It does actually look a lot nicer. So if the Rockies want to avoid a real tough season, if the Rockies want to change the narrative of last year, they're going to have to do it right away, and they're going to have to do it against good teams. The first three series for the Rockies, two of them are on the road. They go to Arizona, and then they go to Chicago. And then they open up the series at home against the Rays. Arizona comes back. Then they go to Toronto and Philly. Mariners head to town for a set. Then the Padres and the Astros series, which is that cool series in Mexico City. And they finish the month against the Marlins. That's a really tough start to the season. That is those are multiple playoff teams. Two teams that were World Series, one team that was in the World Series, one team that was a series away from the World Series and was defeated by a team the Rockies play in there. Two teams that just missed out on the playoffs there in Toronto and the Mariners. Wait, did Toronto end up making the playoffs as a result of that? Regardless, on there, Astros, of course, went into the championship league, the ALCS. The Marlins have always been a pain, especially going to Miami. And you never know with the Padres as well. This is going to be an immediate test for the Colorado Rockies. I mean, these are playoff caliber teams, and the Rockies will get the benefit of playing them early in the season, sure, and that'll be nice. But this is a moment for the Rockies to kind of say, hey, here we are. This is what we got. This is where we feel confident swinging against the big guns because it's an immediate test, and it's right away. We're going to see how the Rockies can handle some of the better teams in baseball. When you look at all of those teams that I just listed off in the first series for the Rockies, whether they be home or away games, these are all playoff teams or playoff caliber teams, and some of them are championship caliber teams as well. The Rockies get a little bit of a break against the Pirates, but then they play the Giants and the Rangers, and then another series against the Padres, and then back to the Giants. They really don't get a stretch of ball against, quote unquote, bad teams like back-to-back series until the second half of the season. I know people might be hesitant about the Giants, but again, as Rockies fans, we can't sit here and feel overtly confident in any divisional matchup, maybe outside of the Padres, especially, but the Rockies were abysmal against the NL West last year. Awful against the NL West last year. And who knows what big changes they'll actually be able to make that not the case this year, outside of this is where you're hoping your players are going to take step forwards. The encouraging part and the good thing about this early season test is it's going to be nice to see these guys. They're going to have to come up and start competing right away. The young guys and the guys that need to make adjustments and need to get better and take advantage of their opportunities on the field, they're going to be doing so against some of the better teams in the business. I mean, this Cubs team could potentially be one of the teams that has the most firepower in the league. You never know what the Giants might be able to do in free agency and who they're able to improve upon. The Diamondbacks are still young, gonna have most of that core, gonna have the pitchers that Rockies have struggled with. Tampa Bay is very good. They will be looking to it'll be interesting to see how they handle Coors Field, but there's not a non-playoff contending team the Rockies play until May. And that's when they, and the Pirates, they might be trying to make an argument that they could be on the fringe. But then after that, it's Giants, Rangers, Padres, Giants, get the Athletics, but then Phillies, Guardians, Dodgers. And I guess, depending on how it shakes up, I mean, this is kind of late in the season, so we'll have a good idea to see how legit the Reds are and if the Cardinals are able to bounce back as well. But you really don't get an interest at kind of a stretch of the season where you don't pull your collar and say, sheesh, until basically June, after that Dodger series in June where you go Reds, Cardinals, Twins, Pirates. Even so, I would it's still, I mean, the Twins are a good team, and you're not really quite sure what's going to happen between those Reds and Cardinals teams coming up. So if the Rockies storyline is going to be set pretty early, the Rockies are going to have a pretty clear idea of where they're at early in the season. Because I mean, if you're talking about early season tests and you're talking about early season strength of schedule, I mean, the Rockies simply I don't know. I wonder if there are actual strength of schedules, but that is tough. Those are to open against all of these teams, including a back-to-back series on the road there for the Rockies, which we know they struggle. And another big long road trip in there where they play two series against Toronto and Philly. I mean, if this team can't handle this high level of competition, I mean, this team they could be looking real tough at the end of April, just because the fact of the matter is they just play good teams or play in playoff caliber teams. So how encouraged should we be if the Rockies actually come out of April, say 500, close to 500, above 500? What does that mean for the Rockies? Let's talk about that coming up in segment number 2. Before we do that, though, going to tell you about some of the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. FanDuel's got you covered. FanDuel Sportsbook, number one in America. FanDuel, and they got you covered all NFL season. I know if you've been listening to me during this read, you've gotten your $150 in bonus bets because I've told you to believe in your beloved Denver Broncos. Because right now, new customers at FanDuel get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That means if you took the Broncos against the Chiefs, if you took the Broncos against the Bills, if you took the Broncos against the Vikings, you'd be getting $150. That happens anytime your team wins. Hey, maybe you could bet on the Nuggets or the Avs. Check it all out at FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on the action. The app, super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and lots more. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on for all the action this NFL season. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. Then you can find all the teams, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you, your 24/7 coverage. Here for you 24/7, bringing you 24/7 coverage of the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I just saw me appear on Locked On MLB when it was on there not too long ago. So go check that out. But thank you for making us here at Locked On Rockies your first listen of the day, and for finding us on your favorite streaming services and the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. All right, we're talking about the schedule. And as I mentioned, it is a really, really tough start to the season for the Rockies, and it continues to be tough for most of May and really throughout the season. I mean, the Rockies are got some interesting stretches here where they have to avoid something that they did a lot last year. And we were talking about the storylines and the identity and kind of the tale being told for the Rockies early on in this season is they got to avoid those long stretches of losing. They cannot afford to go on the 6, 7, 8 game losing streaks. Like it felt like we saw them go on so often in last season. And unfortunately, they're not going to have very many breaks to avoid that. So this has to be a team that gets better. This has to be a team that shows improvement, or else we're going to go through stretches where this team, remember, this team's longest winning streak of the year was 5 games. 5-game winning streak was the best streak for the Rockies at any point this season. And if you want to kind of, instead of just a winning streak, you could look at it and say the Rockies' best stretch was when they go 6 and win of 6 of 7. But outside of this little chunk in May, there were so many oftentimes where the Rockies won, or they won back-to-back, and then it was loss, or back and forth, or long 4-game losing streaks, swept, 8-game losing streaks, 6-game losing streaks, there are multiple 4 to 5-game losing streaks last year. And the Rockies are not, in terms of competing this year, they can't afford to have that habit start off the season. This team can't really start off slow. This team, if they want to be in the competitive window, and if they believe that 2024 is a year of contention for them, they are not going to be able to afford those stretches really at any point throughout the season, but especially not when you're going up against playoff caliber teams for the entire first month of the season. So if the Rockies finish April around 500, even if it's a couple of games below or a couple of games above or at 500, that's honestly awesome. That's actually an incredibly encouraging sign for the Rockies. If this team finishes below 500 and is an overall losing team in 24, which it's most likely going to be, that's one thing. When you're losing 103 games and when you're losing in the ways the Rockies did last year, and when things are looking tough like that, that's a different story. The Rockies have to break up those losing streaks, win more ball games to show that the progress is being made, and the progress is being made against good teams. Remember how much we've talked about these issues that are facing Rockies batters in Rockies offense, especially and when it goes to the advanced metrics in our review series. They are going to have a moment to go up against some of the best in the business and get an early season at-bats to handle it. And if they're able to do that, that's going to set the stage for a better 2024. Even if they cool off later on, even if the tough stretch is still comes later on, like we know, the collapse later on, that's going to be tough. If the Rockies are even close to 500, I'm not going to sit here and say that if they survived this first month of the season at that level, look out, wild card. That's not the point. The point is to be encouraged that this team was able to handle, came ready to go against this high level of talent to start the season. And that means that they're gelling, they're more confident, they're in control, and things are working for the Rockies, and the things are together, and the team is staying, probably healthy. If the Rockies are finishing 500 or above 500, that's got to mean that they finished spring training relatively to mostly healthy. They're getting solid performance out of their pitching staff, and the young guys with concerning trends on offense, even with potential, are starting off the year strong. All the things the Rockies need to make things feel and go better in 2024. All of this will be encouraging and good to see. So it's kind of good that the test is coming early. We're kind of going to know a little bit about the Rockies here early on. I know it's early season. I know teams take a while to get going, but the Rockies schedule ain't going to get much easier. And even hidden within all of that is all the Dodgers games start coming later in the season and later throughout there. And again, you're going right after you get some sort of reprieve against the Pirates. You have a team you've struggled with in the Giants. You play the World Series champions, and then back-to-back division series before getting a break again against the Athletics. I mean, if the Rockies struggle in April and the beginning of May, this team is going to be in dire straits, because these are teams that are going to put it on and are going to be built to win. The Rockies cannot afford to have a slow early start to the season with their strength of schedule. And how are they going to, and really it's going to, the biggest thing that you could be encouraged by a successful start to the season for the Rockies is that if the Rockies are winning ball games, that means the pitching staff is doing enough to win. And that would be the biggest thing. Because we're going to talk coming up in segment number 3 here about the trade the Rockies made, which I absolutely, I do love it. Because again, it's another low level deal and type of stuff that's not super high risk for the Rockies with a lot of potential upside. We'll dive into that coming up here in segment number 3. But all in all, when you're looking at this schedule, especially the first half of the season, it's a true test for the Rockies. It's going to be a big test for these young guys. And it's going to be pretty evident and pretty clear about the Rockies' decisions on what they should be doing with some of their veterans and some of their tradable pieces. Because if you are competing more than you think, might be a reason to buy at the deadline with the anticipation of 2025, something with a little control, something that you can kind of work with and go with the mindset of it'll help in 2024 and 2025. And if the Rockies really, really struggle, then it should be easier to move on from some veteran players that are on expiring contracts. If the Rockies are below 500 by a long shot by mid-May, start of June, the Elias Diaz talks, that thought should already be going up in your mind. Same with, your Brendan Rodgers moves. I mean, depending on how this early season goes, that's going to set the stage for the Rockies' activity when it comes to trades as well. Because if this team does start the season off well, if this team does, surprise and handle this tough early season test, they might be more hesitant to trade some of these guys. They might be hesitant to move on from some of their veteran guys. They might want to believe in and go with this core, even if that might be flawed. So we'll just have to see. But it's one thing's for sure. The Rockies' record. I mean, the 2024 Rockies are coming out of the gate being tested. There's no room for a slow start, or else they're going to get left behind, because the level of talent to start the year is far greater than what the Rockies were last year. And with a long road trip to start the season, that's an even more concerning thing. But mixed in with all of this, with this challenging start of schedule, is an opportunity for the Rockies to surprise us, and for an opportunity for the young Rockies to show that they've gotten better and taken steps forward. And that also would show that the Rockies organization and the Rockies coaching has taken a step forward. If this team is able to come out and those big strikeout numbers and chase rates and all those other concerning trends that we've talked about are way down against these teams to start the beginning of the season, again, I'm not going to sit here and say wild card, here we go, but I'm going to feel really good, and I'm going to feel better about the Rockies, and I'm going to enjoy watching them more in 2024. But the warning sign is there. They have no stretch where they can really afford to self-implode and plummet, because they just simply play too many good teams in too many long stretches of the season. And those are going to have huge impacts on how 2024 goes for the Rockies. All right. The Rockies did address one of their needs in a little trade. Yet again, trading with some of the same teams they trade with. Yet another trade with Cleveland. We are going to talk about that coming up next here in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where we appreciate you being part of the show and appreciate you for subscribing to the show. The easiest way to help the show is to subscribe to the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Want to appreciate all of y'all for another wonderful year of Rockies baseball podcasting here on the Locked On Rockies podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in and joining us here. And especially for tuning into the YouTube show channel as we launched that, what was it, earlier this year? I can't even remember. Or a year ago. It's all flying by at this point. But all right, folks, let's talk about the trade the Rockies made. Cal Quantrill is now a member of the Colorado Rockies, and he is going to be an interesting little thing to watch for the Rockies. The Rockies traded minor league catcher Cody Huff, and he is a right-handed pitcher. There is Cal. We're reading from Rockies trade for pitcher Cal Quantrill by Renee Deckhart on Purple Row. The 28-year-old went 4-7 with a 5.24 ERA in 99.2 innings, pitched 58 earned runs over 19 starts with the Guardians. He also struggled with shoulder inflammation, which certainly accounts for the reduced number of innings he threw, but also may have contributed to the pitching struggles. But if you look at his last 6 starts, Bill Schmidt told Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post, he was the best he was all year. He's pretty good, and that showed us that he was healthy. Bill Schmidt also said we were looking to get better on the mound, which came together over the last few days. Of course, this was last week. He's a good competitor, and we are looking to get innings. We're hoping that if he's healthy, he'll be able to provide that. He eats innings. He's not a big swing and miss guy, but he's doing something right. You know, a little worrisome when it comes to that. But you know, again, if he's able to be effective like he has shown in his career, he is someone that can certainly be effective for the Rockies. And if he could eat innings, that is certainly what the Rockies need to do. And then when let's see here, Renee compares Quantrill to Chase Anderson and Chris Flexen and says Quantrill is the superior pitcher by a notable margin. When you're looking at it, he had a lower K through 9, but a lower walk rate, gave up less home runs per 9, had a higher left on base percentage than Chris Flexen, ground ball percentage of 40, better ERA than both Anderson and Flexen. Similar innings pitched too. Flexen pitched 102 and Anderson pitched 86. And by WAR finished at 0.7 compared to Chase Anderson, who finished at 0.2, and Chris Flexen at 0.5. Back to Deckhart's points here. Quantrill was not good in 2023, but he's better than Anderson and Flexen. Moreover, the 11 home runs he gave up were fewer than those allowed by Anderson, 17, and Flexen, 25. In addition, the Rockies were surely attracted to that 40.8 ground ball percentage compared to Anderson's 39.2 and Flexen's 36.2%. They're hoping that they can get a bounce back to 2021. Let's see. Matt Sees, this is also from the piece here, also writes, Quantrill always found a way to outperform his expected stats significantly, and it was in large part due to his contact quality control. Quantrill found ways to consistently get weaker contact despite tiptoeing the wire because he never missed bats. That's the big risk, and that's the big issue for the Rockies, for Rockies pitching. If you're not going to miss bats, and they put it in play, you got to induce that weak contact. You got to hit your locations. You got to be able to handle that, or else ask Kyle Freeland what happens. You're going to get rocked. So I'm really hoping that Cal can continue to keep those low home run numbers down and continue to get that induced 40 ground balls at a 40% rate, because that works well for the Rockies. When it works well. Absolutely. We've seen it be successful for the Rockies before. And when, again, looking at the stats and looking at the performance, we'll take an upgrade over Anderson and Flexen. Is it a major upgrade? No. But it's a catching prospect you haven't really heard of, and he is, so the catcher is pretty set up for the Rockies right now. And so you can read more and find out more about Cal Quantrill there from Renee Deckhart's piece in Purple Row. But love these type of moves from the Rockies. Major league ready pitching, prospect that wasn't, one prospect, a catching prospect at that. Easy flip, low, not a ton of commitment as well with the Rockies. It's not like that you trade and it's an immediate huge contract type of deal. The Rockies add an arm. They add an MLB ready arm with a simple trade. And the last trade the Rockies made with the Guardians, it ended out working up pretty great there with Nolan Jones. So these are the type of moves that should be the norm for the Rockies. These are the right types of moves for the Rockies to make. And I'm encouraged by a guy that has good numbers and good potential and someone that can fill a spot for the Rockies. The best thing that he can bring is going long in games, being healthy enough to go and pitch to the 6th or the 7th and really be able to go in there and keep games close, even if he does end up giving a couple of runs here and there, given that he's got that pitch to contact philosophy. If you're able to keep things close, and hopefully the Rockies offense can back him up, this is a low risk move to build up your rotation. And if you look at it compared to two of the options the Rockies certainly have to be considering at this point, and Chase Anderson and Chris Flexen, it's a little bit of an upgrade. So I think it's a solid move for the Rockies. I think it's something that it's addressing a need for not a high cost. So let's see what happens, and let's hope for a bounce back. Again, 2024 is just kind of this weird season where we need to see steps forward from the Rockies, but don't expect them to be the big surprise team, at least in my opinion. Could they? Maybe, sure. But if they're going to be a surprise team, good, solid starting pitching is going to be a part of it. Even if it's not knock your socks off starting pitching, solid starting pitching has to be part of it. And we'll see if Cal is able to contribute to that. All right, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day and for finding us on your favorite streaming services and the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Your subscription, easiest way to help the show grow. And hey, while you're on YouTube, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can also get more Colorado sports coverage with the Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs podcasts. Folks, until next time, this has been Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.